All right. Well, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, everybody. We're going to take a look at a capability within Windchill for parts classification. My name is Rob Romanowski. I'm the Director of Sales Operations for 3HTI. On our panel today is Jeff Gavio, our Director of Marketing. We also have leading the presentation and demo, Zach Carson of the Virtual Center of Excellence of PTC. So I think this is a pretty important capability to be able to know that you have access to the right part and the most recent part that you need for your specific assembly. This is something that could really gum up the works and cost you a lot of time. So without me talking or taking away any of Zach's thunder, I'm just going to let Zach get into it and take it away, Zach. And thanks everyone for being on.
All right. Thanks for the intro. Well, as Rob said, today we're going to be going through Windchill parts classification. Now, the concept or the tool itself is pretty simple, but the benefit that you can get from it is huge. The idea with parts classification is to really allow you to manage tons of different components or different, basic consumable types of parts or even documents in your system and classify them based on attributes so that it's really easy for you to go into Windchill, to reuse things that you have, maybe even find something that you aren't sure if you had or not in stock, and hopefully reduce a lot of the inventory and a lot of the clutter that you have in Windchill. So we talked to a lot of companies. These companies that we talk to tell us that the challenges that they deal with, and honestly, most of them are facing pretty similar ones. So the first challenge that we really deal with a lot of times when it comes to classifying your parts and your documents in your PLM system is pretty much what I mentioned before. It's really hard to go in there and find and then reuse parts. So what happens is that gets you to lots of duplication. You might have multiple of the same part in your system with different part numbers. So then whenever you actually go to use a part, and potentially even if it's a component type of object like we'll be looking at today, that you are keeping in stock maybe on the shop floor, then you might have even say multiple bins with different part numbers, even though it's actually the same part. So it's really throwing your inventory out of whack. It's making it hard to keep track of the parts and then to account for them on your bill of materials. So as a byproduct of that, what's happening a lot of times is designers that are working and managing data in Windchill or any PLM system, they end up remaking a lot of the designs. And they're essentially at that point becoming unproductive because now they have to waste what would have been value-added time simply because they can't actually find the object and see whether or not it's something that they have in the system. So together, what the outcome of this is increased inventory costs, because you end up purchasing duplicates that you don't actually need, but you don't realize that you already have them. And even if it's just one part, you repeat this process, hundreds, even thousands of times, it can dramatically shoot up your costs. And I saw this happening firsthand. I came from a manufacturing environment. This was a problem that we dealt with directly. So I can kind of see here how, once I've joined PTC, see how this solution can actually provide real benefits to you in the real world. So what Windchill parts classification is going to provide to you, first and foremost, is advanced search capabilities. So within the Classification Explorer, and we'll look at this in Windchill in a few minutes, you're actually able to go in and search for objects in Windchill based on whatever that component actually is. So you don't necessarily have to go in and type in a name or a number. You're actually going to set up these classes in the categories and with the criteria that you want. For example, one of those might be electrical components. And then you can go in there, click on the electrical category and see all of your different electrical components you have. It could be resistors or diodes, all these different electrical components, or even you can search on the characteristics of those components. So you can come in and search on resistance. You can search on washer diameter, on nominal diameter, whatever specifications you actually need to meet with the part that you want to search for. So within this, you're really able to tailor the whole structure. If you look at the picture on the right, for example, in your browser, sort of as I mentioned here a second ago, you can set it up to basically pick, in this case, between electronic and mechanical components. And then within each of those categories, you have all kinds of different classes set up to organize everything. And you can set up as many categories and subcategories as you want, depending on how specific you want to get and how particular you want the actual library to be built out. So what this is really doing for you is providing you a single point of access to data to all of your different objects, where you can come into Windchill, you can quickly search for parts or even reuse these components in your different designs. Right. So what this really looks like in Windchill, there's a few different categories. And again, we'll go through this in Windchill and you'll actually be able to see it in action. But the idea is to go into Windchill, to take these components that you have that maybe you're manufacturing them, maybe these are components that you're actually getting from suppliers, maybe these are documents that you want to classify. There's different, routes you can go down, but the end goal is all the same. It's to take the objects, the data that you have in Windchill, and to organize it to make it really easy to find. The way that you do that is, number one, you're going to define a structure. So you're going to say, as you saw in the previous slide, what or how you want these categories to be laid out. And then that way, once you've laid them out, then that's actually information or metadata that you can classify and require that information to be entered whenever a new object is created in Windchill. So for example, if you go into Windchill and you are adding in a new document, you want all of your documents to be classified within the Classification Explorer, so you can make that a required attribute, so that before someone actually saves that new document into Windchill, they have to put this in one of these classes to make sure that you're standardizing the process and that everything is going to be organized. Once it's all managed in Windchill, then you're able to navigate through that parts catalog and look at the different classes and criteria and search for them based on different attributes, and even search for objects that are pretty similar. So let's say you have, you're using a certain washer on a particular assembly and you want to check to see if, that model is going to be iterating, that object is going to be iterating and having a slight change to it. So you want to see if you have a washer just with an inner diameter, let's say 2 millimeters larger or 1 millimeter larger. You can actually come in here and search for that information very easily, rather than having to spend hours going into Windchill and looking around, or maybe even into your CAD system and modeling a part just to put it into Windchill and then eventually buy it from someone. This is a much more efficient way of doing things. And then beyond that, once all of these are managed, they're going to be treated really just like any other part in Windchill. So you can do parts comparisons, where Windchill is actually going in and identifying the differences between, let's say, Rev A and Rev C of any of these different classified parts that you have. So as I said, pretty simple concept. The benefits are huge. So what we're going to do now is jump into Windchill, and you'll actually get to see here what this tool really looks like in action and what it's like to add in a new object and actually classify it in the system. So right now, we're in the Windchill home screen. We are going to start out by looking at the advanced search capabilities. And with Windchill Parts Classification, or the Classification Explorer, we're going to specifically today be dealing with parts. You could be dealing with documents here. The Classification Explorer still applies to documents as well, but for today, we'll just focus on the mechanical parts. So whenever you have the Classification Explorer, first thing you'll see here towards the bottom of the screen is, within the advanced search, I can use this tool to search on classifications at a very top level. So maybe I want to just type in washers, for example. I don't know what the washer that I'm looking for is yet. I don't know if it even exists, but I just want to search to find a particular class and see if this is something we have in our library. The other option is I can also go to the Classification Explorer within the browser. And this is where you're actually going to see all of the classes and the schema that we've built out to put our components within. In this case, I'm looking at electronics. So you can see here, I can use the tree on the left to go through these, or I can just use the breadcrumb trail on the right. In this case, let's say I want to look in electronic components. I want to find integrated circuit. I want to see if we have a particular, I don't know, particular component, a sensor or something within this library. This is just to see if we even have it in stock, because I honestly have no idea. So it's really quick and easy to come in here and find that. And I could do it just a breadcrumb trail, the tree on the left. I could do it via keyword. There's different options for you. Right, so for this demo, we're going to look into the mechanical components, and I'm going to go into metric fasteners, washers, and then flat washers. So you might have this built out even more, where you have flat washers, lock washers, conical washers. The list can go on. There's no limit to how many different classes you can set up. It's just really whatever makes sense for you. In this case, flat washers are a pretty big category that we have. So what you'll see here is I got 51 different objects. I do not want to sort through all of these to figure out if I have a washer that I'm looking for. So I'm just going to use the results, the refined results on the left, and I'm going to put in some different ranges. So I'm going to say, this is a part that I'm buying. I'm not manufacturing it myself. So I want my sourcing status to be approved, because I want to work with an approved supplier that we have. And I also want to say an outer diameter, give a minimum for outer diameter. I want to say it's a regular washer series, and then put in my nominal size. And this narrows me down all the way to one single washer that I have now found that we're managing in Windchill that fits the criteria that I need it to. And now in the thumbnail navigator, we can actually interrogate this and make sure that it at least at a high level, looks like what we want to work with. And then if I scroll over to the right here, you'll actually be able to see the breadcrumb trail for that classification that this is being managed in. All right. So right from here, just open this up, click on that information icon. It takes me to that part page. And you can see here, we actually have a category within the details page that says this classification group. So really just a visibility tool. But what you'll see is this part is just a standard part managed in Windchill. So it's just like any other WT part you have in the system. It has your, you have your part structure, you can have related objects, you can see your where used. So no different than any other WT part. It's just we're organizing to make it easy to find. So for this, we're actually going to go through the process of creating a new part and classifying that. So I'm just going to go into this radiator. I'm going to say insert a new part. And what you'll notice here is we have it set up so that whenever someone creates a new part, they have to put it within one of these classes. If we're using this tool, you're not going to get any benefit from it if you're not using it the way that it's intended. So for you, if this is a pain point for you, going in and searching for information, and maybe you have a lot of duplicate parts, then come in here and require a classification to be entered in whenever someone creates a new part or creates a new document. And they're not going to be able to add this object to Windchill without classifying it. So that's going to make sure that everything is easily searchable and that you're following a standard process. So in this case, the part that I'm creating is just a flat washer, just something basic. But what you'll see is whenever I go to click next after putting in the basic attribute information, now I have to lay out my classification group. And these are the different categories that are going to be determined completely by you. You can come in here and put as many of these as you want. You can put in or require different ranges of values. So someone can't just come in here and put 5,000 for inside diameter. It has to make sense. And now what someone else is able to do is actually come into Windchill and search for that object, because that is now a new washer in our classification explorer that is searchable in Windchill. And now that it's completed, we'll just go ahead and check this back in, and I'll throw a comment in there so that everyone who sees this object can get some context into what we did. Okay. Now what you'll notice here is this plane washer is a new part within this assembly. As I checked it in, the assembly automatically iterated from A.6 to A.7. So that's that automatic version control in Windchill. And what we can do now is pretend that that's now a part that maybe I don't know that it actually exists, but I want to come in here and see if I have an M36 washer. Well, then someone else could come into the browser and they could actually search for that washer. And you see in this case, it is something that exists. It's a plain washer M36 regular. That's exactly what we created a minute ago. It doesn't have a visualization because it's not a part that we modeled, but it is something that is actually searchable within our classification explorer. So anyone else could come in and find this. So that's really the whole idea with the Windchill parts classification. The last area that I want to look at is what it actually looks like to set this up. So this is going to be your classification administration page. Just want to briefly show you this. Like I've said, this is completely configurable. It's very simple to do. You come into Windchill and you go to your classification administration context, and this is where you're able to come in and identify different criteria, determine the different attributes that everything's going to be classified on, add auto naming rules, add other rules for maybe ranges of values, and put all of that information in here. And this, again, could be parts like we looked at today. It can be documents that you're classifying. And in terms of the actual attributes, there is no limit. It's just whatever makes sense for the objects and the components that you have in your system. Okay. So that's really Windchill parts classification in a nutshell. We went through searching for information using the classification explorer. We created a new part within a product and assigned it classes to search on in the system. And then lastly here, we took a brief look at the administrative side of parts classification, where you're actually able to come in, create and manage classification nodes and schema in Windchill. This is by no means a difficult concept, but it's incredibly valuable. And even more so with the more parts that you have as your products and your supply chain might be getting more and more complex, and you're working now with more components and different vendors and different suppliers. If you have a pretty big company with multiple locations, then that issue actually compounds, because each site might have their own suppliers that each have their own components. And that's just more for you to have to worry about managing within your system. So with that being said, now that we've gone through and you've actually seen it in action, just want to share a few more points to summarize the benefits that this can provide to your company. Number one, it's going to improve your overall productivity, because designers and engineers who are working in Windchill can so quickly go in and search and find detailed parts and models and documents, and then reuse them in other areas of Windchill. You're going to reduce product complexity and increase quality with fewer unique parts that your company is designing for each one of the products. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people look for, let's say, a washer, and they can't find a washer in their system, so they just think it's quicker to just go into Creo Parametric and model a washer real quick and create that in Windchill. It's lost time. It might not take that long for an experienced designer to do it once, but you do it hundreds or thousands of times, and you get multiple people doing that, and it's a lot of clutter you're putting in the system, a lot of wasted time that the people who are doing it are actually using, and it shoots your costs through the roof, because now you're managing duplicates, you're potentially purchasing duplicates, and you're wasting time when you actually go into the system and have to search for this information. Lastly, you're going to reduce inventory costs with better part management, with more reuse and more visibility into past designs and parts that you've used for different products that are actually applicable to what you're working on now. So that is all that I had planned to go through for this presentation of Windchill parts classification. Rob, you want to jump in? You might be on mute.
Not sure if Rob's having some technical issues, but thanks, Zach. I don't think we have any questions at the moment. So thank you again for your expertise.
Sure.
As always, very well done. And I believe that next week we do not have a Windchill webinar scheduled, so watch for an invite for the following week for the next session. And thanks again, Zach. I had no further questions from the audience. So we will
Awesome.
catch up with everybody on the next session in a couple weeks. Have a
All
great
right.
afternoon, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.